February 22nd, 2025. Well, it's been quite a week, and particularly for J.D. Vance, I think, has really shown he has an interesting ability to speak and has definitely made an interesting impression on our European friends. I think he had a very fantastic speech over there at the security conference in Munich. And so that was although I know it's been highly criticized by various liberal forces, I thought he made some very strong points. That in reality, we had the whole Cold War, and previous to that, of course, World War II to fight against totalitarianism. And yet we're now finding in our victory, we're sort of the free world is becoming less and less free. And you have people having police raids on people who simply post some maybe slightly annoying comment, maybe even just telling the truth on social media, and they're cracking down like it was some kind of a totalitarian regime or something. And I think he makes a lot of very good points on that. And so I think that'll be interesting to see how things go. I think that we definitely can see that Trump has made a very good pick there in Vice President Vance, and let's see how this plays out, of course, as time goes on. I think that of course the other, so we're looking forward to a lot of things there. Particularly, of course, and of course we've got Kash Patel now confirmed as director of the FBI. And I'm really looking forward to what he does, because a lot of investigations we'd like to, see happen. I mean, there are things that occurred, like we really don't know much about the two assassination attempts on Trump, in the sense of who was behind them, why did these people did this, and whatever information there was has been so kept quiet. We'd like to know more about what was behind it. I guess particularly the one that the kid, I don't know. That in itself is interesting. And then you have that guy at the down at Mar-a-Lago who seems to be associated with the Ukrainian effort to some degree, in my opinion. So that's going to be very interesting. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and of course you can click the bell for notifications, or you can follow me on Rumble. The address is in the description below. Yeah, so I think that we have I'm kind of thinking that, depending on how things play out, Vance is probably going to be the successor to Trump here. Now, of course, the advocates of DeSantis, I think, would of course not want to see it that way, and I think DeSantis has a lot of potential too. But I think, as a practical matter, a lot of times timing is more the relevant issue than anything else. And I think that Vance seems to follow very close as following the Trump line of thinking. Of course, nobody can really replace Trump. Trump is a unique item, as we well see. And I think it's kind of interesting, this whole clash he ended up having with Zelensky, where he was trying to make some sort of a deal on mutual development of the rare earth materials that are in Ukraine. Although I tend to think a lot of those are actually in the Russian occupied part of Ukraine. I'm not sure about that. Some of it, I'm sure, is other places, but I thought the most mineral rich areas are the eastern part that the Russians have pretty much occupied. So I don't know. That's going to be kind of interesting to see how that goes. Maybe he needs to make his, well, at any rate, that apparently, Zelensky rejected that. And of course that led to, a real clash with Trump, of course. And he basically, pretty much denounced Zelensky as being a dictator and so forth. I mean, and somebody that probably needs to leave office or something. And of course, that's led to, of course, a lot of pushback from the various people here in the media and so forth, the Democrats, of course, and of course Zelensky himself. So I don't know how this clash with Zelensky is going to play out in the long run here. It looks like, maybe the supply of war material from the U.S. to Ukraine may be diminished or eliminated at some point. For one thing, I don't know how much money is still left in the kitty that was appropriated under the Biden years many months ago. I mean, they were trying to expedite the delivery of this equipment. So that in itself may, unless we want to go back and appropriate more money for that, that's going to be a good question right there. And of course, there may be some real problems with the Congress on that as well. And because, I mean, certain people there have a big advocacy for continuing this conflict, and they're including people in the Republican Party. So that'll be like I said in my last video on this. I think we're going to have more trouble with Ukraine initially than anybody else because they have followed this idea that they're somehow going to magically beat the Russians and retake all the territory that they had under the well, at the beginning, let's say when the Soviet Union fell apart. But I think that at this point, that's becoming less and less likely to be the outcome, and that's kind of what Secretary of Defense Hegseth and Trump are both trying to let everybody know that's not a realistic outcome. And what the Ukrainians really need to do is make a deal while the time is hot and save everything they can save. And I think that because step by step, the Russians clearly have the initiative on the ground. There's very little doubt about that. So we'll have to, see, and of course we're going to continue to have all these people trying to maintain there's some ulterior motive on the part of Trump on this thing. But I think he really sees the idea that we need to end the conflict and develop a better relationship with Russia in order to split up their alliance with China. I mean, China in the long run is a bit more powerful economic country, and of course their technology is advanced quite good. It's probably better than Russia's overall in most areas, and so ultimately that will translate into effective military capabilities over time. It's just the way it is. I mean, just as the United States, was a very inventive technological country in the end of the 19th century, and eventually it translated into the United States being the dominant military power. That's sort of the way that thing goes, and so China becomes the long-term threat. In terms of immediate capability right now, in terms of nuclear weapons, of course, Russia's stronger, but China's catching up over time, and that's an ongoing development. So anyway, so that's kind of how that's playing out, and I don't know. We'll see how that clash. I don't know that they can effectively, make Trump back off from where he's going, but he'll probably back off a little bit as time goes on here. And another thing that's kind of just popped up, of course, is that apparently the purge of the military has started with the dismissal of General C.Q. Brown as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And now I hear they're also removing this lady, I forget her name is, who's the chief of naval operations. So I think this is going to create another bit of a stir. And I guess this falls in the basic pattern of keeping things coming so fast that the press really can't keep up with what he's doing. And, and he's going to promote this General Raisin Kane, as he's known as, who's was it Doug Kane or something like that, who's a lieutenant general. And apparently, the last thing I just saw before starting the video, he was actually retired. So I guess the idea is to call him back to active service to make him chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It obviously looks like that they're really pushing against the DEI idea that anybody that isn't a white male, I guess, is going to be considered a DEI person, which I don't know if that's entirely fair. I think that C.Q. Brown, for instance, seemed to be a fully qualified individual, and I would point out that he was a person that Trump himself appointed as being the chief of staff of the Air Force when he was in his first term. So I don't necessarily think that that was a good move, in my opinion. And I don't know anything about the lady from the Navy, so that one might be closer to. I just don't want to say because I don't know. But I'm thinking that I don't know what her previous job was, and so what her career consisted of. But, at any rate, apparently this is going to create another bit of a firestorm, I suspect. I don't know. But Trump can probably weather it because he'll probably be doing something else next week. They'll give him something to scream about then. And apparently that's the whole strategy. Now, the question is right now, I think his approval rating is holding up pretty good above the 50% level. I've heard 53, and then I've also seen it's 51 in the last Rasmussen. So, but I think it was 52 last week, and so in other words, it fluctuates day to day. But the question is, if this sort of attitude and behavior continues, will at some point that kind of grow old with people? I think that's an issue that we have to watch. He needs to watch out for. I hope it doesn't at this point, but you see what I mean. He's really trying to take on all the what do you call it, the sacred cows, I guess you'd say. He's trying to take on all the sacred cows all at once and everything else. And sometimes I do tend to think he has a tendency to take a rather authoritarian voice in issues where it might be smarter to simply explain the logic of what he's doing. For instance, like this lady from Governor of Maine. Okay, I mean, yeah, you can just say I represent the federal government and we have federal supremacy and all that, but it might have been smart to say her position is basically undermining, Title IX, is undermining all the things that women's rights movements have been fighting for a long time, by pitting them against males, which obviously are not really superior in the male competitions, but will beat the women in most cases. So, and I think that's the kind of thing that would make a better statement. But then again, Trump has his own approach, like I say, is unique, and I don't think anybody else is going to be able to duplicate it. So, at any rate, so it's been a wild week. I think Vance has really come out pretty strong here, and he's as the number two, and I think he's, his star is perhaps rising, in my opinion. At any rate, I know that a lot of the left will not like what he's doing, but I think somebody does need to start criticizing some of the behavior of these European countries and the way they're behaving, because they're really pushing back on human rights, in fact. So, at any rate, I'll be wrapping this up for now. I'll be posting on, of course, YouTube and Rumble as always, and the address of my social media accounts are listed in the description below. So, all for now.